Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. It's very, very nice to have you with us. I'm always nervous to say anything at this point, Paul, because I don't know if you've noticed, the audio for the first 10 seconds is diabolically bad when you replay it. And I have no idea what that is. By now, I'll sound completely normal, but for the first 10 seconds, it'll sound like that.
Don't beat yourself up so much, Nathan.
It's not me. StreamYard. It's definitely the tech. Anyway, this week in WordPress, I think we're on episode 168, something like that. Very nice if you've made the effort to join us. I appreciate it. You will see a star-studied panel. Well, apart from, me and Paul can probably step out of that. But we've got some absolutely lovely guests for you today. And I'm going to let my good friend Paul Lacey, who joins me each week as the co-host, introduce everybody today. So over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Nathan. Well, if you listen to WordPress, and by that I mean listen to podcasts or live streams or anything like that, then you should have heard the voices of the two panelists we've got today. So because they are legends in podcasting and streaming and all that kind of stuff, and Bob there is laughing as if he's not, but we all know you guys have been around doing this and giving value to the community for a long, long time. And so we're very appreciative that you both come on the show at the same time as well, which is actually just a happy accident as well. So that's awesome. So to give you an actual introduction to who you are, first of all, we've got Bob Dunn, who is a publisher, a podcaster, and a connector at dothewoo.io. And you've got a number of podcasts, right? You've got your main podcast, and you've also got your Do the Woo podcast, and you also run some meetups now as well, of which Robert is part of that one as well. Is that right?
Yeah. It's I'm always changing, so that's good. You're bringing that up. I run the Do the Woo podcast is primarily it for now, and then I have a news podcast for WooCommerce as well. And my live feed events are actually going to become part of the podcast because just for various reasons. So essentially I do 2 episodes a week of Do the Woo.
Awesome. We've also got Robert Jacobi, who is now the director of WordPress at Cloudways. And Robert's also ran 3.5% of the internet, with 20 years of experience as an open source executive, entrepreneur, and evangelist, and also works with SMBs to Fortune 500 companies as a strategist and analyst. He also reports news and provides opinions in daily newsletters on his news site, robertjacobi.com. Robert, what's this about 3.5% of the internet?
Oh, I was running Joomla at one point, the baby sibling to WordPress these days. It's no longer at 3.5%, unfortunately, but it was my sort of gateway drug into the greater open source CMS universe.
Nice.
Amazing.
I did a podcast recording last week with David Wormsley, and it was about numbers, just WordPress numbers, of which there's a lot actually, and not just the number of installs and things like that. But yeah, it was quite curious. The whole Drupal Joomla thing came up, and they do appear to be the curve is sort of slowly going down, whereas the WordPress curve seems to be just ever on the ascendancy. I'm fully expecting that if you follow the trend, by 2048, we'll have 160% of all internet uses will all be on WordPress. More people will be using WordPress than there are people actually on the planet.
Yeah, it's the bots CMS of choice.
That's right.
Maybe.
That's right. Yeah, the robots will be installing WordPress. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Anyway, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. We've got about just over an hour and 20 minutes or so ahead of us. We're going to talk about the WordPress news for this week, as we always do. Just to let you know that if you want to sort of follow the things that we do, you can do that over at wpbuilds.com. You can see right at the top there is a way that you can subscribe to our newsletter, or you can use the subscribe link just here, and that'll give you the opportunity to do that. We do this show every Monday. If by any chance you miss it, it comes out, it's repurposed as a audio podcast and we put the video out. And in fact, there's just far too many wheels to do with when it's republished on Tuesday. But basically, you don't worry if you missed it live. You can watch it again tomorrow, and then I do an episode with my good friend David Wormsley, interviewing people and so on and so forth. That comes out on a Thursday. But enough of that. Let's get on with the WordPress news. I'm going to attempt to sort of introduce a proportion of them. Paul will introduce a proportion of them, and then the idea really is that we just facilitate the conversation and allow our guests to espouse their wisdom. So let's hope you guys have brought your wisdom with you this morning or this afternoon. First one. Yeah, go and grab a coffee quickly, guys. If you've got about 30 seconds. WordPress 5.8 Beta 2 has been released. That's our first one. We always try to do sort of the core stuff first. And there's not really a lot to say about this other than if you're watching live at the moment, you'll see that there are some highlights here. The block editor, they've done various things to that. So they've added a type property to allow core to identify the source of the editor styles. And all really, now that we're getting very, very close to things being released, most of this is fairly technical and we're getting in the weeds a bit. The main message here really is if you are an advocate of WordPress and you are keen to see the project go forward, they need testing at this point to make sure that when 5.8 comes down and it is released outside of release candidate, that it's as bug-free as possible. So right at the top of this page, the link for everything, by the way, will be in the show notes. You can see right at the top how you can get involved. So the more eyeballs that we can turn to that, the better. But 5.8 going to be a huge, big release and mooted for the next few weeks. I am just going to throw that one out. And I don't know if, I know that Paul and I follow it fairly closely. I don't know if Bob does or Robert does, but is there anything, if there's anything that you are keen to see coming out in 5.8, I'll just open the floor to the three of you.
Oh, I'm just, any improvements in Gutenberg, obviously full site editing, how that plays out. I haven't had a chance to play with the betas. We say beta, not beta.
Yeah. The full site editing thing seems to be the big ticket item. That seems to be the thing most people are talking about.
Yeah. So for me, it's my days of beta testing are over. I've become a regular user. I did this with Gutenberg when it came out, so I no longer spend a lot of time. I mean, I listen and read and hear people talk about it and check it out that way, and obviously talked on the podcast, but when it comes out, I deal with it. And that's what I did with Gutenberg. I waited till it came out and dove into it and moved on. And like Robert, it's moving ahead. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think the full site editing thing is going to be absolutely massive, but I know there's loads of stuff under the cover. Good place to go and check out anything to do with WordPress, as always, is WP Tavern. They seem to have a boatload of articles coming out all the time. Anything you're looking forward to, Paul?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the improvements to the block editor. I think for me, the block editor is just a replacement for the Tiny MCE editor. So I've tried, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, Nathan. I've tried a few sites building out with the blocks for everything, and it hasn't worked out for me very well yet. So I'm sticking with my favorite kind of stack, which tends to be Beaver Builder, Beaver Themer type approach, because it's just mature and works for me and in all the scenarios, whether it's my own sites or client sites. I feel happy with that. But I'm looking forward to the improvements to the user interface on the block editor, because I do think it's an improvement on the Tiny MC editor. But in terms of the big headline, the full site editing, it's getting merged into core. But there is a good article on WP Tavern by Justin Tadlock, who has tested this in terms of someone who's not actually probably in the core. He's probably tested this and released the results of his tests the most publicly out of probably anyone else that I'm aware of. And he's been involved in most of the different rounds of testing with full site editing. And he does summarize in the end that it is launching and isn't quite there. In fact, it's not there at all, actually, was kind of his summary, that at the moment it's really quite a good tool for building out full page landing pages. So, destroy the header, destroy the footer, build everything within there. In theory, you can build out sites. but there's a lot of things that aren't included in this version of full site editing. So it's not really full site editing yet. It's the first part of full site editing in Core. And one of the things that is a little bit troubling is some of his things he's found out in terms of a user easily being able to get confused whether they're editing structure or content and ending up mixing the two. So 1 minute they think they're editing the content of their page, but it's so similar to when they're editing the structure of the page, like the header or the footer area or something, that someone could easily forget what they're doing and start adding content into templates. So that's the kind of thing I can see them cleaning up over time, because it will become apparent. There'll just be so many users having that problem. But it sounds like a really good launch. Whether you like Gutenberg or not, it's there and they're making improvements to it. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm glad of the improvements.
You flip-flop, don't you? 1 week it's hey, and next week it's boo.
Do you know what it is? I'm really impressionable. All right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So whoever I hang out with, I always like to listen to what people have got to say and try and help it form my opinions. And I think that we had Anne McCarthy on the show, and
We did, yeah.
yeah, and also Birgit, who are really, involved in that side of things. And I got to hear their opinions and what they were doing and their reasons for this. And it pulled me towards getting in, looking a bit deeper and stuff. And so I can see all the good that they're doing and why they're doing it and why they think it's a great thing. But it's been a while since I've spoken to them. So the other side of my influence is pulling me back to you know what? I like it. It's all right, but it's not for me. It's not for agency type people, in my opinion, yet. That's just my opinion. I'm trying to get better.
Bring you back to the light. It's block editor Gutenberg all the way.
Yep.
Yeah. You really are very bullish, aren't you? You're very, very pleased.
I've loved it since I first saw it. Whatever, it was 3 years ago. Is that
I thought you were going to say when I was 3. I was thinking, crikey, that beard has come on quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
The one thing I was just going to add was real quick was I had Anne McCarthy on recently, not too long ago, maybe 3 or 4 episodes, 3 or 4 weeks back. And one of the things she did mention is that 5.8, I mean, everybody's all excited about it, but from the user standpoint, there's very little they will see. It's more in the back end what everybody else is seeing and how things work. She said 5.9 is actually going to be a lot bigger, and that's where you're going to see more of the things merge in. So
yeah, the roadmap until I think it's August and then December, possibly. I can't remember the exact dates, but certainly by the end of this year, by the time we get into 2022, the intention from Josefa down is that it's going to be really a very, very big change. It's been what did she call it? She called it something like an aggressive roadmap or something like that. And I think she's sticking to it. And most of what she wanted seems to be coming down the pipe. Anyway, so that's really nice. Everybody's take on 5.8. That's lovely.
Good release,
Let's move.
I think.
Yeah.
Good release in summary.
And thanks for bringing in that Justin Tadlock piece as well. You can find that over on the Tavern. Speaking of the Tavern, this is quite nice. It's unusual that we plug our own stuff, and this isn't really my own. Well, in a sense, it's my own stuff because I recorded a podcast episode with Dan Maybe. Perhaps you know Dan, perhaps you don't, but Dan he's from the UK, and he runs a Big Orange Heart. I say he runs it. It's a, what do you call it, Robert? In the US, we call it a charity. You call it is it a non-profit?
Non-profit, and Dan is the executive director of Big Orange Heart.
Thank you. I didn't want to get the words wrong, but Dan started this charity in the UK, and very recently, for all sorts of reasons, it's become, it's moved its credentials, I suppose, it's where it's based, over to the US, but he still continues to do his work in and around positive mental health and all sorts of other things in the remote work community, of which WordPress is a great big part. But he's also a really big advocate of meetups, and he was at one point, this when you say it, it doesn't sound like a lot, but he ran 4 meetups each month in different parts of the UK, and I know the UK is about the size of Rhode Island or something like that, but it's not. If you're going over to Liverpool and to Essex and to Suffolk and in London, he was probably clocking up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles a week. Not to mention the time that he was giving up, and didn't really blow his own trumpet or anything like that. Then when the whole COVID thing hit, he managed to get his team to do everything online, and I have to say, the online stuff that they've put together, Robert can attest to this. I'm sure Paul could as well. The online platform that they've built to facilitate that event is absolutely fabulous. It's gained maturity over the course of the year, and now I'm just love going to those WordPress London meetups. So anyway, sorry to blow your trumpet quite so much, Dan. I know you probably won't like that. You'll probably be blushing. But I just wanted to say thank you. So we did a podcast episode that you can see on the screen. You can find it over at wptavern.com. And you click the podcast link at the top, and it's episode number 4. So I'd really like for people to go and listen to that episode. And then can you do me a favor? When you've listened to that episode, will you just search Dan out and give him whatever feels like the right pat on the back, whether that's a tweet or an email or something? Just go and pat him on the back. And he's been receiving a little bit of that this week, and I think it's been quite nice. So anyway, there you go. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that episode, but if you did, go for it. Now's the time. I
can just say I know Dan as well, and I owe him a couple of drinks actually. Last time I saw him, I did a talk at London meetup before COVID, and he was buying everyone drinks and everything. So I need to repay a couple of those. But he is a superhero in WordPress. I think that's all I'll say. He's just a superhero in WordPress, and we all massively appreciate him. And if you've been to any of the London stuff, whether it's online, then he's probably had a part in your enjoyment of that experience.
Yeah, really nice. It's curious because one of the things that came out of the episode that we recorded was, although the software, it's created by developers and volunteers and people seconded in and all of this kind of thing, it is interesting that it is about the people. And during the last year, I think even Josepha would have to admit that the whole isolation that everybody has been experiencing has impacted the development of the software, because events like WordCamps, which Dan is part of, are a key component in making the software move forward, because you get little breakout sessions, and you get people meeting up for contributor day, and you get people who just bump into each other in the corridor and come up with and all of a sudden there's 6 people having a roundtable discussion about something, which then actually turns into something 6 months later. So yeah, really interesting. Okay, so that was my first bit. The other bit that I wanted to mention, oh, good grief, Paul, you've stuck another one in. This is, sorry, I don't. A
bit more self-promotion.
Yeah, I don't like the old self-promotion. Oh, but I was lucky enough to get these 2 people that you can see. It looks like what you're looking at now, doesn't it? It's really weird.
I need to get different blood shirts at some point in my life.
Robert, you're consistent. You're consistent.
Oh man, that's
Look,
get a screenshot of this.
I've totally got the same stuff on, and so have you. That's genius. That's so embarrassing. But we spoke to, obviously, Robert and Oliver Sild. Oliver Sild is the guy behind what is now PatchStack, formerly WebArcs, which is a security platform, like a SaaS hybrid plugin. I'm going to get that off the screen. I can't cope with looking at that. And really, Robert, I'm just dropping this in your lap. Tell us about the partnership, because it's not a merger, it's not an acquisition. This is just a straight up partnership between Cloudways and PatchStack. So tell us more.
Yeah, just one of those old school things, that people don't do anymore. But our goal was to, help the WordPress, ecosystem by contributing and partnering with PatchStack for, open source hooks and things into WCLI, so people can integrate with different kinds of security solutions, getting plugin theme updates, all that fun stuff. We're obviously going to incorporate that work into our Cloudways stack, but none of that's proprietary. That's going out to everyone because we believe that a more secure WordPress community is a better, healthier WordPress community.
Although we spoke a lot, did it take long to? I don't know, because you're recently to Cloudways. I'm curious. Did you step into the middle of that conversation, or was that a conversation that you started with Oliver after you knew that you were taking on the role?
So the answer is yes. So I've been talking with Oliver since actually before they did the rebrand from WebArcs to PatchStack, just independently interested in what they were doing, and there, as I stepped into Cloudways, they had already had some very initial discussions with the PatchStack team. Nice.
So it was just a perfect moment in time. Oh, lovely. Well, anyway, if you're curious, you can click on the link in the show notes, which I'll drop. You can hear it all tomorrow, and click on the link and go and check out what Oliver and Robert had to say. Right. Okay, Paul, you're up. Now we're talking about.
Oh, hold on. You totally missed, as part of Dan, that he's also putting together WordFest Live.
You are so right. Thank you. Yeah, that is actually written on my sort of like little notepad here, and I've completely failed to do that. Let's go back. Let's rewind a little bit and mention. I've lost that. I've closed that site, but we'll just talk. We're back to Dan maybe a couple of minutes ago. WordFest Live is coming around. We have actually done a fairly decent job of promoting it over the last few weeks. We talked about their call for speakers and sponsors and all that kind of stuff. In a minute, I'll try and put the link on the page as well. But WordFest Live is starting fairly soon. I've forgotten the exact dates. Can anybody just off the top of their head give me the dates?
July 23rd?
Yeah, so we've got about sort of 4 weeks away, fairly soon.
24-hour adventure, so some time zones will start a little bit earlier. So I'm trying to remember, maybe in North America, we actually start on the 22nd. But 24 hours of WordPress, everything.
Let me go and put that up because it would be nice, right? WordFest Live. There we go. Found it. And that'll no doubt tell us what we need to know. So here we go. Dates are 23rd of July. I think you got that right. Nice. Let me just accept that one. They've got, I think he said 66 speakers. And having run the summit that I run, which had, I think, 39 or something, so many speakers, but it's going on for 24 hours. So it begins, if you're living in New Zealand, then it'll start in that part of the world, and then the events will move on. If you wish, you can just attend all 66 events. Well, you can't attend all 66 because you can't be in two places at once, but there's sort of 2 tracks, 66 events, and depending on which part of the world you're awake in, there'll be events at that time. They've got a great team of volunteers and helpers, and I think they are still looking for volunteers. So if you go to the webpage, which is at wordfest.live, you'll be able to volunteer your services. And thank you, Robert, for rescuing me from myself. That was great. Paul, Bob, anything about that?
You were MC last year, weren't you?
I was one of them. Yeah. I actually wasn't anticipating that because I had a couple of other things on, but I think somebody maybe was poorly or something. So I ended up stepping in and having a fabulous 5 hours or 6 hours with Wendy. Hussendevelt, and I so butchered that. I'm so sorry, Wendy. And we did exactly what we're doing now. We went on StreamYard and introduced everybody, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I wasn't going to be involved in this year's WordFest, but I am now.
Oh.
I was invited to a small panel, which was really, really nice. And Maya from GoDaddy messaged me to say, would I be interested in coming on this panel? And so, and told me what it was about. I probably won't say what it's all about as yet, but she did say, and this is true, that Dan, I said, when will I know, dates and times and stuff like that? And she said, Dan, maybe we'll be in contact with you. And in my mind, I've had this joke all week, which was, well, could he confirm if he will be in touch with me or not? But the rest of the story is true. I've been holding that in until I was with a group of people who I thought might appreciate it. And I know Dan would appreciate it. I'm sure he's had that one a number of times, so he probably doesn't appreciate it actually. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the panel anyway. So because I was too kind of a bit tired to do a proper talk, but then I was invited on a panel. I was like, brilliant, fantastic! I can be involved. That's great. So really looking forward to it actually. Because it was brilliant last year. Brilliant.
The level of attention to detail is really truly remarkable. And you'll watch it if you attend, and you'll just think, oh, it's an online event. But just rest assured, it's really, really well put together. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you will never see that's going on in the background, and I won't bore you with the details, but it is remarkably well organized, and every I has been dotted and T has been crossed. So yeah, let's hope that it's going to be a really fun event. So go and check it out, wordfest.live. That'd be nice. Yeah. Okay. Right, Paul. Now it's time for a bit of plugin news.
A quick mention for a plugin stroke theme. It's technically a plugin, but it kind of operates like a theme, and it's Oxygen has just released version 3.8. We have spent a lot of time talking over the last 6 or so months about the block editor and full site editing and those kind of things. So we know that there is another way. So there's obviously a kind of traditional way building out sites with things like Genesis, and there's things like what I do with Beaver Builder, Beaver Themer. And then Oxygen came along, and Oxygen is something much more close to the concept of full site editing without a page builder. It's not technically a page builder, it's more of an entire theme builder in one product. And a bit like full site editing, when you activate it, it takes over the whole thing. I'm not actually a user of Oxygen, but I know a lot of people are. And a lot of people really appreciate the level of detail they go in to make this an absolutely amazing product for all sorts of different people. And you'll see in the kind of changelog, there are things around content editing that they've improved. There's things around dynamic data that they're improving, things around coding. And so you can have different kind of tags and wrappers and that kind of thing. Really good example of the other side of WordPress. So the open source project has to work in the way it works. It's open source, it has its processes, and that's how it goes. They can't just have 2 people or 5 people listening to a few customers and then make huge change based on that. Whereas a product like Oxygen is constantly in touch with its direct customers. So this Oxygen to me is kind of like what the future of full site editing might end up being in WordPress eventually, if it can get that good. But yeah, for anyone who is using Oxygen or interested, 3.8 has just come out. There's some new features in there, so it's worth taking a quick look. So it's just a quick mention that that's come out, and a lot of people like it.
Oxygen, I think, is really cool, and they focus so heavily on performance on the theme side. So I mean, that's also one of their sort of claims to fame. It is certainly more technical than like a Beaver Builder or Elementor. No argument there.
It seems to be gaining a really, really devoted audience. But you know, the summit that I was part of a couple of years ago, well, it wasn't a couple of years, it was almost a year ago. We ran the first one, and Oxygen was mentioned far more than I anticipated. Much more, actually. And then this time around, so we decided to put more Oxygen content in, and it went down really well. And it really does seem to have a tremendously devoted following, adherents who have. And the other nice thing, it doesn't seem to get criticism. It doesn't seem that it's made
That's
people
true.
weary of it, if you know what I mean. And that tends to be the case, doesn't it? After a period of time and features go in, people start to, oh, it's bloated and all of this and all of that. And we don't seem to have that. People who are using it seem to be entirely happy with it.
Well, I think part of that is just the appeal to a subset of WordPress developers. It's not trying to, I don't think, be everything to everyone. I don't think it'll ever try for that mark per se. It's how can we, optimize, the geekiest kind of things into a more user-friendly experience.
Yeah. The guy who does the videos, Elijah, as well as writing the code, he's a really great exponent of the product. I don't know if you've ever seen their promotional video or indeed the update video like we were just looking at. He's really great. He's one of those, I'm going to say, annoying people who appears to get it first time. You know, it just like you just don't see the edit. There is no edit. There's no moment where he's messed it up and he's had to sort of, you see him jump suddenly and he does like a 10-minute monologue, clearly making it all up as he goes along with a plan, but just manages to nail it. It's like, oh, I wish I could do that. Honestly, when I record my podcast, I sometimes have to go back and edit like the same thing 4 or 5 times just because you mess it all up.
Yeah,
do you
totally
use it,
unnatural.
Bob?
Yeah. You know, actually, the only experience I have with oxygen is it keeps me alive. But other than that,
that's why it's really important.
It's very critical. It helps me go day by day. But I haven't used it personally. But I just echo what everybody said, that I see it mentioned a lot, and it's, you know, it is, the people that are fans of it are huge fans of it. Yeah. And I see very little critiques or critical, you know, somebody drops it in somewhere, nobody comes in and says, oh, that sucks. You know, it's definitely made its name among the developers and the fans it has. So he's obviously done things very well, and probably the fact that he can do the videos so well, unlike Nathan and I. That is a definite plus. So I
imagine the amount of time you could save, Bob, if you didn't have to repeat yourself 14 times. And I don't know, just totally segueing a minute, I don't know if any of you have kept a weather eye on the fact that there's another page builder which has come around in the last couple of, let's say, 4 or 5 months or something. There's one called Bricks Builder, which seems to be having a similar trajectory in that it's developed by a very small team. As far as I can work out, it's just one guy. Maybe they've got some support people now. I don't know.
I know
Maybe
they've been hiring.
Have they? Okay. But that seems to be getting the same level of attention that Oxygen was right at the beginning. Lots of people diving in, having a bit of a play and seemingly enjoying it. And Peter's obviously a big fan of Oxygen. He says he's a dedicated Oxygen user. Oh, dedicated Oxygen users are very dedicated. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, Peter's a toolset and GeneratePress user, as far as I know. So, but it's true. I think the Oxygen users are pretty diehard. And a lot of them moved from Elementor to a lot of the diehard advocates. So there's a lot of advocates for the product, you know, vocal advocates that absolutely love it. A lot of those used to absolutely love Elementor, but then Oxygen, like we said, came in with a performance first attitude, and was able to see everything that has gone on in the past and address a lot of those things for what people were asking for. But for a tool like Elementor, some of those corners can't be turned anymore. So doesn't matter for Elementor. They've got a huge audience in lots of different spans. But like Robert said, there's just like a subset of WordPress users that didn't have the perfect tool yet to use, and then Oxygen addressed that for them. So for that group of people, I think it'll be around for the long term. I think I can't see why not.
I think it's curious how these different companies market themselves as well. You know, so for example, Beaver Builder, my experience of that is they just sort of gently push out an email, and you know, they don't shoot any video content to sort of go around it. They just pop out an email and say, we've done this. Here's the change log. Go and have a look. Oxygen, slightly different. You know, they put together a video, bit of a change log, but it just drops in an email somewhere. And then you've got the likes of Elementor who shoot like in 4K on location, these amazing videos. It's just a really different kind of approach to doing it. You know, they've got a different way of doing it.
Well, and Oxygen has a crazy huge Facebook group.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Like, I want, it's like 20,000. I mean, it's absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
It built and grown really, really quickly as well. I think Bricks is their major sort of competitor, but most of the people who are the advocates of Oxygen like Bricks as well, but they can see that it is actually, I don't know too much about Bricks, but I know that it is a different target market. It's slightly different. It's nuanced difference, but it's enough that the people who like Oxygen will probably like stick with Oxygen, and a new subset of people will probably be really into the Bricks concept. And so lots of choice. That's the wonderful thing sometimes about WordPress is that, when you've got a tool that is powering 45 or whatever % of the web, even the smallest subset, the space for a product and for a way to do things the way you want to do it, if you want to do it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okie doke. Just curious, right? This is totally off topic. You were just mentioning, Robert, about Facebook groups. I love my Facebook group. I really enjoy interacting with the Facebook group that is part of the WP Builds thing. But I've become a little bit more, well, let's just say that I've not really got the same level of interest in being in all the other wide and disparate Facebook groups that I used to be involved in, largely because I discovered that it was a time hog for me, and it was quite addicted to wasting time in that way. And so just by dropping out of them and concentrating on the one that I really want to be involved with, that worked out for me. So that's my first question. Is anybody kind of like getting fatigued with Facebook? And take it from there, Bob, and I'll come back to my second point.
Okay, I was just going to say you hit me at a really interesting time because I'm leaving Facebook this week. Totally. I have a page that has like 1,500 people that don't pay attention to me. But other than that, I've just made, and I'm not going to go into a whole, reason behind this, but it's been a long time in coming, and I'm just ready to blow out of there. So obviously groups for me have I kind of burn out on them about, I don't know, a little while back. I used to go in there and try to follow trends and kind of get a feel, especially when I was writing tutorials and stuff. It was good to pick up content from because it gave me a lot of good ideas, but I had to wade through a lot of redundancy and, same things. And it really depends on the group. There's, going from one group to another. But essentially, moving forward, I'm going to be the worst person to give any kind of answer to this because I will totally be out of the sphere of the Facebook, and I'm not sure if it'll be different. But anyway, but I just thought I would throw that out there as a showstopper. No, I'm kidding.
That's it. We're going to end
You're not making the argument for me. I've actually disappeared from Facebook for a while, came back over, the last year and a half, but I don't use it for anything. So like any personal social stuff, that's not ever happening. There are a couple of groups I quote unquote follow, but I mean, if I log in for serious into Facebook, that's maybe happening once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. And I always joke, people send me Facebook messages. I'm like, that's the surest way to never get a hold of me.
Yeah.
So those just die.
I'm really curious about whether we're at a point where people are just becoming a bit jaded with it. And what I mean by that is it was extremely interesting for a while. This great social experiment, the iPhone comes along and so do mobile phones. And suddenly it was always in your pocket. And it was fascinating what you could do. And suddenly you could be in touch with people all over the world at the same time. And then that kind of just wore on. Nothing particularly new or imaginative, as far as I'm concerned anyway, came along afterwards. So it was just more of that. And then the advertisers came along, and we've got the specter of perhaps being tracked a little bit more than we'd like, and so on and so forth. So I'm very keen on my own Facebook group, but just like you, Robert, I have no presence there. In fact, I'd be interested if, I don't know what's on my timeline, but I never put anything on there. So anything that is on there is by accident. I just go in and interact with groups.
Oh, my timeline is just part of any kind of social, using Sprout Social to just drop everything in all three, so platforms.
Yeah.
But, WP Builds, great. Niche Agency Group by GoWP.
That's a nice group.
That's a nice one, yeah.
That's great. I mean, there are some really good ones. I mean, Admin Bar. I mean, there's some great little neighborhoods, but I would just love to go out and meet these people in person.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't that it? I was listening to, there's a podcast network called Twit. I don't know if you follow it. It's Leo Laporte. It's kind of been going for the longest time, long before podcasts were a thing. And he's got a show called This Week in Google, and I listen to that every single week, and it's really good. It's actually got almost nothing to do with Google, and it's basically about the wider web, Facebook, and all of that. And he brought to my attention this thing called Mastodon, which is sort of an open source Twitter clone. And I've installed an instance of Mastodon at wpbuilds.social. Actually, funnily enough, because we mentioned it last week and I didn't delete it, I've still got the thing. And I'm experimenting with that. I don't for a minute suspect it'll get any kind of traction, but there's about 35 people in there at the moment. And I just like the idea of trying something where there is no tracking pixel. If you put something in there, it's just between the 35 of us that are going along. So if anybody's interested in that and they're just sort of fed up and you want to talk just about WordPress in a Facebookless environment and Twitterless environment, it's at that URL, which I didn't even know was a URL, wpbuilds.social. I didn't know you could buy the .social domain. But it's pretty slow going at the moment. But if you want to join us, that would be nice. And I've enjoyed setting it up and playing with it and tinkering with it a bit. But it gets me socializing with people that I know I probably would like to keep socializing with, which is nice. So, what about you, Paul?
One weird thing that I came across actually this weekend, which I had not heard of before, Polywork.
Yeah, I just joined that. Yeah, that's
exactly why.
Yeah. I did it I got on there about 2-3 weeks ago. I don't know how I got on there, and it's essentially it's a little bit different. It's more of they say it's more of a creator's LinkedIn, not really LinkedIn. Somebody's saying maybe it's going to be the offshoot of that for creators. It lets you put in projects you're working on. It's not just, you don't have to put in just posts. It's like it's getting people to follow each other, maybe finding collaboration and partnership. And, it's one of those, I don't usually jump in anything like that new, but it just was intriguing enough that I thought I'd go in there and peruse around. So I think it's, I think it's interesting. And I got invites if anybody wants them, but it's, it's, if you want to explore it, but it's,
a nice
cool
website, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really great.
Yeah.
Look at that.
You can just imagine your clients, if you're a web agency, hey, can we have something like this? And you're just like, what's your budget?
Yeah. Can we have animated plasticine characters, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll install the plugin for that. No
yeah, that's right. There's the animated plasticine character plugin. There's also a separate balls moving along tubes plugin as well. You can install that one.
I think,
for those of you that are
Facebook
listening, there's balls moving along tubes on the screen.
Yeah.
I think Facebook, if you're new to WordPress and you actually want to get involved in the community, especially in these times, it's a good place to start to figure out what's going on and where things are going on and what things you can listen to or watch or attend. But I think a lot of us probably get, and I know a lot of people in the comments are using the YouTube link rather than the Facebook one these days. I think it just gets a bit fatiguing sometimes, Facebook, and I almost completely left. I know Lee Matthew Jackson is in the comments there, and he's almost completely left. And Bob, you're leaving, and me and Lee had lots of conversations about this because I probably dropped out before he did, and then he was asking me about it and was I disconnected from everything. And the fact is, someone like you, Bob, or Lee, leaving WordPress is once you get to the point where you are a creator and you've got an audience, the only benefit that you're really missing out on is dopamine hits from seeing people saying nice things about you on Facebook versus the negative side of things, that the FOMO and all the other things that come with it. So it's just
Paul,
almost like a
Do people say nice things about you on Facebook? I never get that.
No, I don't either.
They say nice things about Bob and Lee. So there's almost no benefit to me being on Facebook. But I think if you've had any doubt about if it's the right thing to do or not, at any point you can come back. That's the crazy thing about it. So you can just leave, see if life is better that way, keep creating, and people especially now, the people who want to listen to you will go into Facebook, hear about you, and then they'll come to you and you can communicate to them on the platform of your choice, whether that's Twitter or Circles or whatever.
Or your WordPress site. I mean, that's the big thing. I think you kind of abdicate some of your content responsibility when you're, so focused on the platforms. I mean, the best way to own and build up your brand is to come to Paul's website, come to Nathan's website, come to WB Build. That's the best way, I think.
Yeah, because we're normally saying how we are connecting. If you want to connect, this is where I am, and in a year's time it could all be different. But I think we need some in-person events back again so that we can sort of expand how we all communicate. But it's just too much online at the moment. So
I made this exact same point on actually, oddly, in that Mastodon thing that I was talking about earlier. And one of the people, Chris, I'll put your comment back on in a moment. One of the people I was talking to over there came up with this plugin. It's over at GitHub. It's called Friends. And it seems a bit like a sort of social network, a federated social network, which Mastodon is. So if you've got your little installation, it can combine with all the other ones and you can communicate. They're not little silos. They can be, but they don't have to be. You can combine all the different networks, so it makes one big network. And somebody pointed out this. It's over at github.com/akirk/friends. Can't say I've played with it, but it looks like a kind of nice way of doing social networking on your own website. Do you know what I've got really into, which is a bit old school? I've really got back into the RSS feed and comments on websites. Just good old fashioned writing comments at the bottom and seeing where that leads. And it's great.
RSS, it's like that's the only I've never dropped RSS.
No.
I've used it to keep track of everything, and it's just like I've never found anything to replace it.
Yep.
Did you hear that the idea of when you subscribe to an RSS feed, it appears that Google, I think it's Google, is sort of trying to update the language on that. So in the future, I think within Chrome, there's going to be a button in the main UI, this follow button, I think they're calling it. And so the RSS feed will be a bunch of follows, not subscriptions, because it would appear that a lot of things like Spotify are starting to use that language. I don't care either way, but it's just interesting that will be part of the browser. And I don't quite know how that'll even work, but presumably if there's an RSS feed tucked away somewhere on a page, Google will surface it as a button in the Chrome UI, and you can then click a button and give more data to Google. Lovely.
Yeah. I actually use an open source app called NetNewsWire.
Oh yes,
my RSS. Yes. Yeah, and I love it. It's simple. It's its own little app. It does exactly what I want, and I can easily catch up. So
the big question is, I mean, I've loved RSS probably for as long as Bob has, and Google had such a great platform for RSS.
So good.
And they flushed it down the toilet, and they've just realized that, oh yeah, we should probably still be doing it. I mean,
duh.
I'm sort of like so mad about it. I use Feedly as just sort of
I do. That's my go-to now as well. Yeah,
just my centralization, so I can pull up RSS on any device. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to futzing around with Google's implementations. Burn me once, that's plenty. Thank you, Google.
Do you know, I was thinking about this the other day because I was looking for my wife. She wants an app to do like a to-do list, and she's got an Android phone, and pre-installed on the Android phone is the Google Keep app, which serves as a reasonable to-do list. But that was the exact thought that went through my head was how can you possibly have any trust in this? Because I mean, fair enough, it might go on in perpetuity, but equally they could just shutter the whole thing and you've got all your to-dos forevermore. In the same way that Google Photos, I was really beguiled by that and I really loved it. And then the free tier went away, and it just suddenly occurred to me, well, it didn't occur to me. Somebody said, well, why do you think it's gone away? And I was like, well, because I don't know. They've just decided. He said, no, they've got all the data out of the photos they could possibly want now. Mm-hmm. They've got every bit of AI intelligence they could want. They've had 4 or 5 years of untrammeled access to all of your pictures. They now know what dogs look like. They know what every signpost on Earth looks like, what every building looks like, and so on. It's like, well, we'll close that down now. We've got what we need from that. So I'm with you. I'm using Feedly. I did use NetNewsWire. And I've tried a few other things as well, but Feedly works well. I've got a great big list of RSS feeds, just WordPress RSS feeds, which help me create the bits and pieces that I want to
Yep.
to see. And Robert Jacobi, I've got to say, yours come up quite a lot. You just got that beautiful
man,
big
it's just
blue
like-
R. It's just like there's
Yeah.
Robert's.
It's like
Everybody
I'm
else
always
is-
clearing it. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, there's 10 new ones. Oh, it's Robert.
Yeah, they come in clumps, don't they, Robert's
Well, that's
posts?
the thing. My schedule's gotten so crazy that it's not on a daily basis anymore. Now it's just like, oh my God, I have 4 hours. Smash as many posts in.
That's nice. It's really nice. And so, as always the case, there's going to be a contrary opinion, and it's Chris Hughes. Chris has got the opposite opinion of the Facebook thing. Sorry, we've totally gone off message here, but it's been fun. He's more involved than ever with Facebook. Made some amazing partnerships here. The fact real names are generally required keeps it authentic compared to Twitter. Yes, I'm sure you're right. And obviously, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. What doesn't work for me will probably work for you. Stay tuned, Chris. I won't say why, but just stay tuned.
Well, I mean, to Chris's point, that's, for that kind of stuff, that's why I prefer LinkedIn.
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I just
talk about it as
can't-
much, but it's enormous. And I think just for I can actually focus more on actual work in LinkedIn, and I prefer the experience overall compared to Facebook anyway. So
yeah.
Agree.
That's, hands down, there's
I'm
Twitter,
totally
which
ignorant of
don't use,
LinkedIn.
but then, comparing Facebook to LinkedIn, I'll take LinkedIn any day of the week.
Do you know, it's fascinating because I'm just like you, Paul. I can't make head nor tail of LinkedIn, and it really is because I haven't made any effort. I've made no effort to go in there.
I don't
was
think I've even
watching-
got a photo. I don't think I've got a photo or anything.
Yeah.
I've got like an old profile from a decade ago. People still say, congratulations, you're still working for that arts organization, which I left like 15 years ago.
Yeah, look,
And
see,
it's terrible. I need to update it, but it does nothing for me yet. But it's probably not helped. But then again, I haven't applied for a job for 15 plus years. And that's an ignorant thing to say, oh, I don't need it because of that. I've probably missed out on something. So it is on the list to check out. Robert,
well,
so.
I was looking this week at LinkedIn again, just because I was trying to hook it up, and apparently you can now push content like this, video content, through platforms to. So I went in, and this is like the biggest slap down ever. It was lovely. I applied, and they just said, you're just not important enough. I can't remember the wording of the email back, but it's no, we decline your request to have video access because nobody cares about what you say. Is basically what I got. But I don't put any time into LinkedIn. So whilst content goes in, I've curated nothing. I've made no efforts there at all, and I don't get it. But I was listening to the Elementor Summit, which was last week, and I think it was called What was it called? Creators 2021, I think it was. And they had Gary Vaynerchuk on, and his I think at the end of his monologue, he was asked what's the best bit of advice, and he was just work on LinkedIn, just really concentrate on LinkedIn. And I just thought, okay, I've missed that one. That's why Gary's dead famous, because he's worked on LinkedIn.
Got a good LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, there you go.
While we're on trust and Facebook and WordPress and mix them all together, so obviously, like, we use Castos for hosting this WordPress. Bob, I don't know if that's what you use as well, but basically, Facebook just announced that they're releasing a podcasting platform.
I know, I saw that.
And it's we've got everyone's just shaking their head. I mean, it's just worth mentioning.
Hell freezes over.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this is the thing. Like, RSS is like something that hasn't really been corrupted as such, and one of the terms of service that people need to know about if they're thinking about using Facebook as a podcasting platform is that Facebook reserves the right to take your content and mash it up with other things. So you can, oh my gosh, can you imagine the political to the left or to the right of mashing up people's words combined with their ability to detect audio to text, and basically go, right, we need a bunch of famous podcasts to kind of say this message, and let's make a montage episode. And I don't think any serious creators will use the Facebook platform apart from the ones that probably get paid to be kind of brand ambassadors of the podcast platform itself. But it's I just think podcasts. I actually think podcasts will survive that, and I don't think that it will it will have a big effect on the true content that people want to speak about. But if you have a podcast and you want to keep it to be your content in your place, then WordPress and your own podcast host is the way to go. Keep it open source and keep freedom of speech unmanipulated.
I read that piece over the weekend, and because it was over the weekend, it didn't make it into this week, so it'll probably make it into next week's news. But I was really curious about it, and I just saw that as another AI grab. I just saw that as another great way of Facebook getting, because it'll probably go along with transcripts.
Yeah.
And so they'll be able to mine everybody's voices to, figure out what word. I'm sure they're pretty good at that already, but as another way of doing that. But I guess in a sense, they've got to this. They've got this maturity, haven't they, Facebook, where everybody by default is on it, and there just seem to be a few of us who've got beards growing and stuff who are like, anything to do with that. And but it does worry me. And then you see people like Spotify. I actually had to download the Spotify. I'm not a Spotify subscriber because there was a podcast that I really wanted to listen to, and it was walled inside. It wasn't paywalled. It was just walled inside of Spotify because they paid to have it made. So you had to, and boy, Spotify are good at putting notifications on my phone. I must have had like 7 or 8 this week, just trying to get me to upgrade and offer me this sort of three months free tier. And I've hovered over it a few times thinking there's quite a lot of good content in there. There's quite a few. I wouldn't, I've got a different thing, so I didn't in the end. But it just worries me that podcasts are kind of becoming a bit of a commodity in the same way that lots of other things have done over the recent
years. I was just reading, there was a scathing review of and I can't remember, a famous comedian that started a podcast because all the actors and comedians are doing it. And this person basically said, this comedian broke every rule of podcasting. He rambled. It was a worthless show. It was, they think because of who they are, they can do it. And so it just, it's growing out. And as Paul was saying, on Twitter, somebody had shared highlighting all the terms of service.
That's what I saw.
Basically, and that's what, Paul and I said, of course, I won't do it till hell freezes over. But if you're thinking about this, at least look at these terms before you do this. Because, sure, people will jump on the bandwagon, especially since they think, podcasting, I've been wanting to do it, and now, Facebook's doing it. Oh, this is cool. I can just be in here with all my friends. I can do a podcast, and everybody will listen to me. So, they're rolling with the punches there, which is unfortunate. But, it's not surprising either. It was like when I saw it, I shuddered for a moment, and then I got up off the ground and did my tweet and stuff. It was like, okay, I'll just say this, and, you make your decision.
I put the way that I use the Facebook group that we have is that I just put the link back to the website. So if new content is produced, we just post the link and say, come and listen to it. And obviously you've got the RSS feed, so the audio can be consumed directly into your phone and downloaded onto your phone. But it sort of sits inside of the the WP Builds account, if you like. There's the whole list of all the episodes we produce, and it feels like the RSS system isn't trying to take anything, but I did once or twice put the entire podcast episode in our Facebook group, and I thought, this is silly. What's the point of that? So we stopped doing that. I stopped doing that. What's the difference? Oh, sorry. Right. I want to come back to Chris, because he had a different opinion about that as well. He can't cope with LinkedIn. The inbox spam on LinkedIn. Okay,
that's fair. I mean, there's a lot, but it's actually pretty easily ignorable relative to all email spam.
Yep. And Andrew Palmer, hi Andrew, nice to have you with us. He says, what's the difference between Facebook Live and Facebook Podcast? I think the podcast is going to be an audio only thing, and I think you send it directly to them as opposed to doing it live. So you pre-record your podcast and then you send it over to Facebook, and they take on the job of sort of promoting it across Facebook as part of the normal feed, but then they take ownership. I don't think they take ownership of it, but they take ownership to the extent that they can do whatever they want with it. So they can chop it up and use this sentence against that sentence, and presumably mix it up with other people's work as well. So it might get in inverted
like you can
commas
imagine like a fashion, like a fashion thing. It might be like, let's summarize what the influencers are saying about, the best baseball cap to wear in the WordPress space or something like that. And they could combine, different people saying this or saying that. And it would kind of make sense as someone who just wants a kind of summary of like different voices from podcasts. But I think the ability to misuse it, which, these big companies, they do. So is the big worry. And the other worry is like at some point, maybe they'll change the terms and conditions to say if you want to stream live to Facebook platform, then you lose that as well, and then that'll be a big problem. But I think some of these established things, it's harder for them to change. Bring in something new audience. Everyone wants to start a podcast sort of thing, then they will get a lot of customers for that. But
yeah, and you'll be stuck on there. Yeah,
right.
You'll be stuck, and you'll be like, if you're going to start it and you think, oh, this would be great to put on my site, and that it's where it started, it's going to stay there at least up to that point. So
I've not been a big user of Twitter at all, and in fact, to the point where I had to get Dan, maybe who we were talking about earlier, and Paul on various occasions to actually show me how it works, because I genuinely don't get it. I just get frustrated. Like, I don't understand. I still don't, Paul. I'm really sorry. I know you tried your best, but my head is too thick. I still don't understand. If I see a tweet and I know that there's context, like somebody wrote something before that which led to it, I still can't figure out how to play it all backwards. I have no idea how that works. And I've really tried.
I'll make you a video, Nathan, and send
please.
Okay.
Honestly, Bob, no matter, right, here's my promise, right? And this is a sincere promise. No matter how good your video is, I still won't get it. There's just some block there.
There's a challenge.
But isn't there, because it can't always be a straight line, can it? It can't always be this person started it and then it just went straight down. Doesn't it
I know what you're
bifurcate
saying.
And go off in...
Yeah.
But how do you...
exactly. You could have a weird thread tree coming off of it. So then you might wind up deep inside of a tweet thread, and then you got to go back up and then look for the other replies. And
read more, load more.
Okay.
Add more useful threading functionality.
See, this is why I like the whole WordPress thing. It's just there it is. It's chronological. Just the further down you go, the older it is. That's all there is to it. There's nothing particular. Oh, of course, there's nested comments. Shut up, Wrigley. It's time to move on about WordPress.
Yeah,
right. Where
I think
did we get to, Paul?
Let's come back to the business one in a minute. Just a quick mention of this a new plugin being announced and launched by Ben Gilbanks, his website is binarymoon.co.uk, and he's created a plugin that, it says here, takes control of the WordPress plugin and theme notifications. So if you scroll down a little bit, Nathan, you'll see that it's all these crazy notifications that this
Whoa,
overload.
is that an actual screenshot?
I've seen some of my sites.
So bad.
I've seen some of my sites look like that when I haven't logged into them, and I've just been using managed WP updates or something like that. And I log in and I'm like, oh wow. So anyway, Ben seems to be kind of a bit perturbed that this wasn't really getting dealt with by the core team, but it was very, very important. And so it's created, and this is another thing I love about WordPress, has created a really creative way to do this. And what he's actually done is using JavaScript to kind of hoover up, like vacuum cleaner up all the notifications and move them within the document object model into this little button where all the notifications are, which is exactly what it makes sense where the notifications should be. So he's also argues in the article, well, first of all, well done, Ben. Amazing plugin. I'm looking forward to trying it out. And a lot of people get annoyed with those notifications. Second, he also addresses why he hasn't just tried to contribute to the core. And what he basically said was he doesn't really have time to do that. He's got more time to have the discussion about doing it with the core contributors. It's better use of his time to just do it and release it as a plugin. But he's hoping that the core team will see what is done, see if it gets good traction, and then maybe this concept of an idea will work where that's where the notifications live. I'm interested to see if it's Yoast and Jetpack proof. Can Yoast and Jetpack get past his plugin, and so you get all the useful ones end up in the notification bar, but Yoast's Black Friday deal will still make it through probably. We'll see.
I think Ben ought to also introduce another plugin called Notifications Plus or Pro, and it just literally fills your WordPress website with notifications, just tons and tons and tons of notifications. This is so sensible. I absolutely love this. I love the implementation. I didn't know what you just described, that it's actually not rewriting things in the back end.
It's just in PHP. Well, I mean, there is some PHP, obviously. Right. But the concept is that the page loads, this JavaScript knows what the wrappers look like for all the notifications. It grabs them all and moves them over here behind the little thing with the number showing how many there are.
This is the way to do it, right? A little bell, just ding, ding, ding. You know, you can ignore it for weeks and weeks. It's just there. That's the only negative. We've been talking about this for months, haven't we, Paul? And I'm
just
sure
like
that
every other application in the world does it.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I also think, and we've mentioned this in the past, what you could have like tiers in there. You know, you could have an area where admin core things go. There could be a second for advertising. You know, you could permit certain plugins to send adverts your way, and they just live in the advert pane. So, you know, you want the pro version for a 50% off consumer adverts, but they go up there. Anyway.
Cloudways have got a good solution. You can decide which ones you're interested in. Is your database going slow or whatever? You can do that. And you can hook it up to a third-party thing like Slack so that you can get those notifications there. So I think if you combine something like Ben's idea there of where it would live within the WordPress admin, and then some useful kind of API ideas, which his concept of just using JavaScript to move them wouldn't work. There would need to be some kind of API that hooked into them or something. It would be great to see that in the future at some point. And but if not, we have plugins. We can just install this and don't need to worry about it.
You know, and I know on like Post Status, they've talked a lot about a notification plugin. So, but it's open source, so you can always get around it, of course, if you want to. It'll be curious if a notifications API is created, whether the plugin repository would mandate its use to be allowed, you know, onto wp.org.
Sorry, I was just trying to put the URL. He's made it part of his tool belt plugin, it looks like, which is a suite of other similarly
sensible
things.
Tools. A
load of sensible stuff. But you can see it. It's this is what it looks like on WordPress.org. Tool belt. It's like got a look at that! Look, a hexagon with a wrench in it. It's a good idea for a logo.
That's an awesome logo.
That. And it's yellow as well, isn't it? What a
kind of great taste.
Not sure about the hammer though, Ben. I mean, honestly, you're really overdoing it with the hammer there.
Go on, Nathan, you're covering up Robert's face.
Yeah, I know. I just realised that. I'm so sorry, Robert.
We should move on to the
let's do it.
Bob, unless you've got anything you want to say about the notifications, we've got a really nice article.
I would just love to see it, you know, pushed
some direction in core. Yeah. Okay, so next up we have a article and a huge research project that WP Engine has done. Where's my glasses? I need those on to read this bit. So they've done a huge report. There was some important people, Dr. Chris Brower and Vanson Bourne, which both sound like some kind of superheroes from Hollywood films, actually combined. So I mean, you know, they know what they're talking about clearly. So they've together with WP Engine and over 100 individuals and organizations come up with what they feel the value of the WordPress economy is, and they've put a figure on it. To be estimated in 2020 around 596 billion and likely to grow to 635 billion by the end of 2021. I don't think it includes, for instance, revenue that goes through a product like WooCommerce. I think this is just talking about the value of the hosting companies, the agencies, the plugins, the themes, everything, what everything is potentially capitalized at. So clearly a huge economy. We all know it's big. a couple of highlights from the report. There's an infographic you can check out if you go to their post. Scalability: 41% of the internet is built on WordPress. It's more than that already. More than 82 million WordPress sites. 35% of the top 10,000 sites are built on WordPress. 635 billion by the end of 21. That's 6.5 year increase. 89% of users surveyed believe that WordPress community will continue to grow over the next 5 years. It's just numbers after numbers after numbers of, big stuff, getting bigger and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And we have on the show today some people who I think understand this better than myself and Nathan. Bob, first of all, you have your WooCommerce podcast, and you know the value of this particular product, WooCommerce. And I don't know if you've seen this report yet, or if you've got any comments on it at all. And Robert, from your own point of view, you've been involved in the business side of WordPress forever. So we're really interested to hear your opinions on this one.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, read the article. I actually downloaded the ebook, but have yet to really dive into that. I guess to me, it's nice to put it in perspective. I think we all knew it was big, but putting numbers and putting this data in front of us obviously proved that point. It's not exclusive of WooCommerce. It's WooCommerce, of course, has, that whole space in the last year and a half has just skyrocketed, and it's insane. I mean, I can, could go on, and just from having people on the podcast and my own experiences and what people are doing as far as setting up sites, it's there's obviously continued growth that's going to be happening there. Yeah, it's overall, I don't really have any deep insight to it. It's one of those things that I read through and it was just like, I was nodding. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see, it didn't surprise me. And I think, all of us have been in this space long enough and seen it grow. So it's just, to me, it was refreshing to see it actually down in numbers versus in just, this is how much of the web we capture and so on and so forth. It gives it a bit deeper WordPress is still on its way to maturity. So yeah, I think it's good stuff, obviously.
Well, and if we think about I'm going to take a slight tack to this for just a second. If we think that WordPress will also be Gutenberg, and how will Gutenberg and block editor transform other experiences? We're going to hit on some of these, but Tumblr coming into play as how will that evolve? Will that become a much more pleasant alternative to Facebook? Will things like Day One? We'll probably hit some of these acquisitions later in the show, but those are all going to become WordPressified too. So it's not just your traditional WordPress site that is now being included in all this. That number is going to grow to some degrees exponentially as other tool sets start taking advantage of some really cool stuff. Again, that's why I love Gutenberg, because that can be transformational for a lot of projects. Yeah. But back to the more interesting question, and which completely struck me as huge number. This is interesting. WP Engine put it out. Why did WP Engine spend all this time and money to put it out? I'm waiting for that S1. I said last year that they're going to file to go public in 2021, and this only lends more credence. I wish I had some more fun info on scoops on that. But when you put out something like this to define the marketplace, it just screams like, and we're going to be the big guys in this marketplace. So
they actually say that in the article. I don't know if you've noticed. Like, they said it's about 15 times mentioned. WP Engine, the world's most trusted WordPress technology company, announced the results of it, and that the world's most trusted WordPress technology company is mentioned so many times in the ebook and the PR.
Yep.
Nothing. I mean, I don't know how they validated that. I don't know how you self-validate something like that, but it seems to be like a slogan as such that they're keen to use. And And you're absolutely right. It's like I think every time Matt Mullenweg can give another % on the the use that the share price of Automatic would go up a little bit as well. But I tell you what, I was on Dopey Tonic panel show a few weeks ago, and Spencer Foreman had this really crazy. I thought it was crazy, but it was funny, and I don't know, maybe scary and realistic. Prediction. He was like, and Jonathan Wald was on it as well, and Spencer predicted that you got Automatic, which apparently capitalized at something like 3 billion. I don't know where these numbers come from, but I'm just going to go with what he said anyway. And Wix is capitalized at 15 billion, so it's 5 times bigger than Automatic. And Automatic, its flagship is WordPress, obviously, and WooCommerce. And Spencer was predicting, and he was like willing to put money down with Jonathan Wald that Wix would buy Elementor and fork it and create their own fork of WordPress, just to, as he would say, stick the thumb in your eye. I think that's how he says it, to Automatic. And if you are a company that technically has 5 times the amount of billions of dollars of the main company behind WordPress, then it's not an impossible thing that could happen to actually go, okay, these all reports are all great, but watch this, boom. I mean, I thought it was fairy tale, but who knows these days?
Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, Paul? It was more than a couple of weeks. It was more like 6 weeks ago that the falling out somewhat publicly of Matt Mullenweg and I forgive all the Wix people out there, the man behind Wix, and yeah, you never know, some sort of tit for tat $1 billion acquisition just to
it wouldn't cost
you.
them, if they've got that much money, they could afford to buy out Elementor, probably, who clearly are going in direction of forking WordPress at some point. Probably is what most people think.
Okay, please. I think thanks for that heads up, Paul, because I don't think that's crazy in the slightest. In fact, I'll double down and say I'd be surprised if it didn't happen. I mean, there's a reason Elementor is building Elementor Cloud. I mean, that is going to be the Wixification of WordPress, and WordPress wants to have its cake and eat it too. I think that's a no-brainer. And here's the other thing: they're both local companies. They're both Israeli companies, so I'm sure there's a lot of of that local networking that happens. So again, I would be shocked if it did not happen at some point.
I think the best thing about this article is we all get to just put our little fingers in our mouths and go, $500 billion. So much money. I mean, it's as much as I can manage to buy a bowl of cereal. I mean, $500 billion. That number. There must be European countries whose GDP doesn't really get. Yeah,
in the report it says that it would be something like the 39th richest country in the world, if that, and
wow,
I can't remember.
That was it.
Something like that. Yeah, it's worth a good look. I mean, obviously they've got 2 smart people and talked to a lot of organizations about this, and it's all paper money, a lot of it. But still, I think it's just reflective of the overall situation, that it's huge and growing very quickly.
And for me, the whole thing is when I look at this, I always joked about, before I got into WordPress 13, 14 years ago, I was in the real business world. That's how I say it. And it's kind of a sarcastic thing. But, with everything that's going on that we're talking about here with the acquisitions, everybody's saying, oh, our little community, what's happening to it? And I just think it's business as usual. If you lived in the business world, this is constantly happening. And WordPress is getting to the size where, it's open source. It has its unique community, but it's also part of business overall, globally. I mean, it's, none of this surprises me. It's like, in fact, sometimes I'm tickled by it. I think, wow, people are acting like other businesses now. They're, they're looking at it and acquiring other businesses. And we moan and groan about it, and people have attitudes about it. But, if you built a huge business and you've been successful at it, and somebody 10 times larger than you says, I want to acquire you, that's an accomplishment. That's not a failure or a, I've given up type thing. That's huge. Yeah. So I think we're just becoming a little bit more mainstream, and it kind of freaks out, especially the core community, because, we used to stand around and hold our hands and sing Kumbaya. And now it's like, okay, now we're entering the real business world here. And so it's just an interesting perspective.
Can I just say, Paul, remember the words standing around singing Kumbaya. That's got to be the title of this episode. That's so good. Sorry, Robert, carry on.
I remember one of my points. Now I totally lost the other one.
Oh, no. Oh well.
I remember. So just back to the Wix thing, just so people have names. The CEO, founder of Wix is Avishai Abrahami. So
Thank
you.
For
reference. But I think where WordPress is today is where Linux was, 15, 20 years ago. I mean, you had the Susies, Red Hats, IBMs, all these companies that were, had this mature operating system in this case that created businesses out of it, huge businesses, billion-dollar businesses. So, and this is exactly what's happening with WordPress, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
It that because it's open source, the beauty of it doesn't actually kick out anything from the community, and you can still actually do. If you want to have intro to WordPress community folk and the little meetups and things like that, that's great. And yes, business will take over the much larger events, but that's okay. Whereas you compare it to something like Microsoft events, well, you really got to admit to that before you can actually really take part in something like Ignite. I'm maybe overselling that point, but you really have to have already been, paid for the partnerships, paid for this, but all this kind of, I would say there's a bit more friction to get into those kinds of communities versus, again, open source or Linux.
That's a good point. The Linux comparison is excellent. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good one. We're fast running out of time, so I'm just going to quickly pull us. I'll do this one very quickly, very, very quickly, if I can find it. Yep, here it is. It's a piece on WP Tavern. Speaking of acquisitions and what have you, Automatic, as we've just been mentioning, has acquired basically it's an iPhone and Mac app. It does have an Android app, but it's a poor relation to the iPhone app. They bought this journaling app, and by journaling I mean this is content that you create just like you would a blog, but it's the audience is you. The intention is that this isn't published online, although I think Automatic have plans to allow this to, at some point, you could maybe make a blog out of this and publish things and what have you. But I just thought this is a really curious acquisition because it's right in Automatic's wheelhouse, content creation. There's an editor, upload images, upload, in this case, audio and video and things like that. And it's goes into a feed, your own private feed by date. I just thought this was a really great acquisition. Everything about it. Yeah, the UI is lovely.
But you can imagine, because I know that here's just a theory. I wonder if they're interested in going, okay, let's buy this app and let's migrate something like the block editor into it at some point and see how.
Oh yeah,
that's exactly
how
that
goes.
Do. Yeah.
Use this as a test case.
The dual licensing thing is occurring for Gutenberg and the block editor.
Yeah, and it's a service which they're on top of every aspect of this, but it's $24 a year, so it's a minimal amount of money, but it's a fantastic revenue stream.
It looks like really Gutenberg.
Yeah,
look at it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of almost prime for saying, let's see if we can make the mobile app version of Gutenberg work for this. And
yep.
Because I know they're interested in, people have made like chat apps, haven't they, out of Gutenberg blocks? And it's early days, but they're trying stuff.
And just think of how this will all be connected. So we have, let's start from the day one portion. You have day one as your mobile, quick, easy interface to publish content. I do use the WordPress app, but day one's just got that look and feel and easy to use. That's different. And then of course, maybe I'm publishing it to Tumblr all of a sudden, which is actually now a WordPress site, which is accessible not only on Tumblr but also accessible via a private domain or a top level domain. And all this stuff is all going to be interconnected. Don't worry. I mean, I'm genuinely impressed with the thinking behind the sort of the content ecosystem that's growing out, because I love it. And then at some point, who's going to be hosting all this? Well, in the case of if you're publishing to Tumblr and to your WordPress.com, I mean, it's great money for Automatic.
Yep. And I would imagine that there'll be at some point in the future, there'll be, some kind of API hook to your WordPress website, whether that's .com or .org, and you'll be able to just push stuff. And it's a bit of an upsell, isn't it? And you can publish it onto your platform. There was definitely mention in Sarah Gooding's article about the public nature of it. But it is just curious, the idea that the intention of a WordPress website is always to produce stuff and it be visible. This is exactly the opposite. You produce stuff and it's completely invisible because much of it is private. It's pictures of your children. It might even be things that you really don't want to share. They're very personal, and it allows you to do that. And Chris Hughes in the comments again. Thanks, Chris. Sorry, Robert, blotching you out again. He says he's been a paid customer for many years. It's absolutely fab. Well, I started using it this week, and even though the Android app is, like I said, a poor relation, it's still good enough for me. And I signed up. And I'm podied up.
I just want to make sure that in this great content model that third parties aren't excluded. And that's
yeah.
And it's Automatic bought it. It's their option. But I think for kind of those things like with PatchStack and Cloudways, how can we make sure that some of this is still connected to the greater ecosystem?
Yep.
And while I believe Matt has that in mind, there's other forces that might take over that say, no, this is all going to be within our silo.
What was curious as well is that in the comments over on the day one side of things, because obviously they've got their customer base, a lot of people over that side of things perceive Automatic to be the dark enemy. They see them as this big giant corporation, which is really not how I see them, because of where I'm seeing them from and the heritage that I've got. But obviously 1,500 employees, they've got this and they own this and they own this and they own this, and they've come in and they're going to ruin our app. And a lot of people literally balked, ran away, cancelled their subscription. Whereas I'm exactly the opposite. I'd never heard of them. Now I'm a subscriber.
We see that in every acquisition, there's going to be a minority for the most part that are like, I just don't want to be part of this. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, on the whole, the other, don't forget, Automatic has a significant sum from Salesforce Ventures. Talk about your dark enemy. I'll take Automatic over Salesforce.
Yeah.
Just it's easier to use on the Automatic side. Now I'm not going to get Salesforce calls. Sorry.
Yeah. Anything there, Bob?
I haven't. I think it's cool. Yeah, I love it. I haven't checked it out. I just looked at through the article. Last time I journaled was when I was a teenager, and I would never want it public anyway. But and that journaling back then was a pencil and a notebook, of course, at that point, because there was not these kind of options. But I just think it's a no-brainer. When I saw it, it's one of those things I just, like Robert was saying, I just echo. It's like, Automatic bought this. Wow, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Content. And what the future of it holds. So for the users, I think it's a great integration.
The problem is it's gonna either force me to get an iPhone or hope that they come out with a better app. So for example, on the Android side, you can't do things like you can't shoot video and you can't include audio. You can just put pictures in and what have you. But even on that basis, it's worth doing. I really like it. Right, we're on to the final home stretch, and it's me to introduce. I hope Chris Hughes is still here, because we're going to mention. Have I missed something out? No, I haven't.
Nope.
Let's do Chris's first. Let's do it in this order. We've got two pieces this week, all really doing the same kind of thing. Big shout out to Chris Hughes. He's been a long time listener of this, and he this week has launched to say that he's launched it is not quite true. This is he's asking you to join his founders list, and you can see on the screen WP Broker. It's at wpbroker.com, and they're describing themselves as the WordPress acquisition marketplace, and you can go and join. It says it's going to be launching in mid-2021. This is quite interesting. No commission fees or platform lock-ins. We aim to make the buying and selling process easy for all parties. We've been going on about the fact that so many mergers and acquisitions going on in the WordPress space. And so Chris has decided that he wants to act as a sort of conduit, somebody that's going to facilitate those kind of transactions to take place. So I wanted to give a big shout out to Chris for that. So that's wpbroker.com. And I'm sure Chris wouldn't mind me also mentioning that this week, I'm sure it's pure coincidence, a rival came out at the same time called FlipWP at flipwp.co, seemingly doing more or less the same thing as far as I can read it anyway. Perhaps, Chris, you could come on the show one day. That would be nice and talk all about it. Doing the same thing. This one is Ian Poulsen and Alex Stenning. Thank you. Alex Stenning behind this as well, and purporting to do the same thing, connect businesses. I don't know if there's a different fee structure or a different way that they're going to communicate with one another and what have you. But whereas as far as I could work out, yet last week you didn't have any choices for this. You had to go and find these people all yourself and do the negotiations yourselves. Now you've got potentially two choices. Looks to me like the Flip WP one might be already up and running, and the WP Broker one is the wait list starting later in the year. But yeah, I just thought I'd like to give Chris a bit of a shout out and mention the rival as well. Oh, there we go. He's made a comment. Sorry, Robert. So Chris has made a comment. Thanks, Nathan. All competition is healthy. How many form plugins do we have? Good point. Good point. So there we go. If anybody's got anything to say,
it's the sign of a maturing, growing market. You know, when you have enough players in the action with enough money, this pops up no matter what. There are hosting brokers that have been around for ages. Even longer, there have been franchise brokers. If you want to get your, buy and sell your McDonald's, those have been around for 50 years. So these are just signs of a, growing, mature market. And that's fantastic for everyone involved.
Yeah, and that's what I look at it. When I looked at it, and I've read different stuff and different comments on Twitter about it, and I don't really care what, people saying, well, this kind of model would work, this kind of model won't, this is the way I do it or whatever. I've never sold or bought a business, so I don't really focus on the actual workings of it. Both of them, people know what they're doing. They're going to work it out. They're going to work out the kinks, however, to get the business working. But I look at it, as Robert said, it's a maturity of WordPress. And I look at it from a different perspective, where I think of people that are outside looking in now, and even people within WordPress. This kind of reconfirms to everybody, wow, there's actually a site where people can buy and sell WordPress businesses that aren't aware that the dynamics are there, and there's incredible businesses out there that others do want to get their hands on. And that brings the whole ecosystem to another level. Just like I was saying, going into the real world of business, it's like, hey, this is impressive. If you want a WordPress business now, you can go specifically there. It's just not going on whatever it's like Flippa or something like that and scouring through everything. This is again showing that we've got some meat in the game here, and things are happening, and there's a lot of potential exciting businesses out there that people that want to buy them and people that want to sell them.
Yeah.
And just to go back, this is nothing new. It's just new for WordPress. Private investors. Some of these WordPress, just anecdotally, some of these buy-sell deals are really inexpensive. It's someone who's put their time in. They don't know how to push it forward. They're done. They just want to get rid of it. I've seen things come across the wire less than, $50,000, which is, a steal if you, want to put some effort into it and do something with it. So, those doctors and lawyers with some sort of play investment money that they have around now are hearing WordPress more and more, in the business news, and are like, okay, let me try something for $10,000 or $20,000.
Yeah,
why not?
Yeah. Speaking of which, I've decided to put WP builds up for sale. For the £8.50. Maybe that's a bit much. We'll go for $8.25.
To be honest,
about
Nathan, Chris Lemmer did do an article about the expectations of what people value them. So you might want to just check that
I think
out.
I've aimed a bit high, haven't I? I've gone a bit
Yeah,
blue sky there. Okay.
Yeah, come down a little bit.
250 to you, Paul.
250.
Done. All right.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
You take Bitcoin.
No, yeah, no, only actual coin. There is a couple of things that we want to mention. Bob's put something in the show notes. For this, Bob, I am literally going to hand it over to you, if that's all right. I'm going to put on the screen the piece that you've brought to our attention this week. It's called Summit 2021. Tell us about this.
Yeah, actually, I brought it up because it's a little shameless self-promotion, but
that's perfectly all right.
Speaking at yeah, but it is. I understand. I didn't attend the last year's one, but it was very successful. It's more around the digital content space. Quite an array of speakers. It's not all WordPress, and yeah, I'm going to be talking more around expanding your site or using WooCommerce in ways to help you monetize your content. But I would definitely check it out. I haven't spoke or done a presentation in person or whatever for a long time, so this was very stressful for me. So be kind when you see me be a talking head for 30 minutes, because it was like freaking me out. Nobody else to talk to. So I would definitely check it out. It's free. It's one day. It's not going to take consume your life forever. And some interesting stuff there.
This is great. Look at this. There's a whole laundry list of people shooting across our screen. I should say the URL that I'm seeing on the page is impossible for me to give to you. It's just a string of pseudo-random noise. But basically, if you go to events.wpengine.com and you search for Summit 2021, the date is, it's like starting at the end of this week, June 24th. Yeah. So in a few days' time.
One day only event, so it's just the 24th.
Got it. Thank you.
And you can join it, and I'll be there in the chat during my presentation, and you can tell me how badly I did or if I did okay. I'd appreciate any feedback.
Oh, that's lovely. I have just got one quick one. Have we got time for this? I don't think. Yeah, we'll just do one. If you're watching this on the screen, you're fine. But if you're not watching this on the screen, you can't watch it. It's just a robot. Check this little robot out. Look at it. Look at it go. I'm describing it. It's like this. It's like a little trolley with two wheels. I don't know where this is made, but it's got two wheels and it can jump. It jumps by sort of creating this spring action, and then it flips itself over. And I saw this and I just can't get enough of watching it. I've watched it on repeat about 15 times thinking, how would you make that? How is that even possible? I'm terrified about robots and things like that.
Is this one of the competitors in the Tokyo Olympics for the floor program?
Yeah, we should have an Olympics for robots. That'd be great. That'd be really fun. But anyway,
we do.
I just thought
Robot Wars.
Oh no! I mean, where literally you try to get a robot to run as a human across 100 meters and do pole vaulting and all that kind of stuff. That would be quite entertaining.
Surely robots axing each other and flamethrowing each other is more interesting than that.
Did you ever see years ago, and it's probably still going on, there is this competition, this big international competition where you can bring your robot and you don't know the task, but it's got to do a human related task. So it might be here's the robot, and the robots all have to look like humans. That is to say, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, something like that. And they put them in a scenario, and you don't know what it is. So it might be as simple as getting out the car. So they just put the robot in a car. Now you program the robot to get. It is so funny because 99.9% of the time the robots look paralytically drunk. They're just sort of trying ever so hard, and then they just fall sideways, and sometimes it's just reaching out and opening a door handle or something, and they get quite close and miss, and then miss again, and then miss again, and then fall over.
Fallen out of a car.
It's so good. Anyway, that's it. That's all we got time for. That was a really 10-cent robotics. Is that what it's called? Robert, sorry, covered your face up again. They own half of Epic Games. Ooh, okay. That's where it came from. Right, that's it. We got no more time for anything this week. I would just like to say a sincere thanks. That was a really enjoyable episode. Thanks to Bob Dunn.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yep. Thank you for having me. Can I just mention one quick thing real quick? I've got to share this. I learned a new word. I've been spuddling lately.
What is
That's
spuddling?
with 2 Ds. It's a 17th century term To work ineffectively, to be extremely busy while achieving absolutely nothing. That has become my favorite word now because I find myself spuddling here and there. So I just had to share that.
Spuddling is the ability to basically to pretend to work.
Yeah, it's just being extremely busy and achieving nothing. And I found myself doing that sometimes. So SPUDDLE.
Yes.
Nathan, we've got a real problem for our title of the show this week now. We've got two serious contenders.
Yeah, the spuddling one's
Spuddling
winning.
while
It's a
singing
spuddling episode.
Come by you.
It's already winning. Thank you so much. I forgot about that. I confess I missed it in the show notes. Thanks for dropping that in. And thank you, Robert. Pleasure having you on the show. We'd like to have you both back, I'm sure. Paul, we've got the awkward bit coming up. Bob and Robert, you don't know this bit yet, but we don't know how long it takes for StreamYard to cut the stream when I click end broadcast. It's an indeterminate amount of time. I'm giving it the constant J. It's J amount of seconds, but I don't know what J is. It's the indeterminate constant, and here it comes. So we're going to wave, say goodbye for now. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
And
Great.
yeah, thank you.